All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS office hours. Today is Wednesday, February 12th of 2025 here, and looking ahead, we have a massive, I believe, 14-game NBA main slate, and basically every team in the NBA is playing today as far as I understand here, and this will be the last time all the teams play before the All-Star break. So we have a small slate tomorrow, and then we enter the NBA All-Star break. So have some fun with the slate tonight. Going to be crazy, I'm sure. But for those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrew, one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. This is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS related questions. Get your questions in one of three ways here. First off, send us an email, support@sabersim.com. Second, post it live in the YouTube chat. Third way, post it in the office hours channel in our Discord server. If you're not in our Discord and want to get access to that channel, there's a link in the description of this video. You also get access to our similar channels, individual sport channels, and you get access to the rest of the SaberSim team. Just can't say enough good things about the Discord. But with that said, we do this show Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, and then we do this show on Saturdays at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. So tune in any one of those days, get your questions answered. Snowman said we do have some golf action teeing off tomorrow morning. So that is true. That'll give people something to sweat over the weekend here. Some golf showdown, some golf full tournament. So good reminder there. All right. It is Wednesday. So let's get SaberSim up here. And we had no questions in the Discord, but we do have a couple here in the YouTube chat. So we'll start with those and then just kind of see where we go from there. So first question, tips for building good processes for folks who excel at building their own projections but are new to SaberSim tools. Is the differentiation in projections good enough as is for Sims, referring to main classic slates? Cool. Yeah, absolutely. So good question, kind of trying to understand, how do custom projections and SaberSim interact? Okay. So the simplest way to think about it is, if we go and we click on any one player, right? We click on Jokic today. And you see, his range of outcomes here, right? Well, let's say that, we haven't projected for like 65 points. Let's say you haven't projected for 68, right? When he scores 50, he's now going to score 53 in the Sims. When he scores 70, he's going to score 73, right? So effectively what we do is we keep the shape of his range of outcomes intact, and then we just shift them to your new mean, okay? What this does really well, and basketball is probably not the best example, but other sports like non-normally distributed sports like NHL, like MLB, right? Even golf with cuts and things like that. What it does is it allows you to take advantage of SaberSim's play-by-play simulations and the range of outcomes that are deviated from those while still accounting for the mean points that you think the player is going to score, right? So all of the frequencies, all of those type of things are still being accounted for in the Sims. And then your projections get basically put like on top of that. And you create like a very nice kind of balance of the two, right? So the other important thing to remember is that if you're using contest Sims, your projections get accounted for, right? So like I was saying, when Jokic scores 70, he scores 73. Well, guess what? That affects the actual score of the lineup. And if it affects the actual score of the lineup, then it affects the payouts of the lineups, which affect the ROIs, right? So custom projections do impact pre-slate contest sim ROIs. They do not affect post-contest sim ROIs. So you might see like one thing where it's nicely accounted for in your pre-contest sim, but if you go check post-contest sim results, those are specifically going off of just the SaberSim projections there. So just something to note. But as far as like process, the only big difference here, right, is that when SaberSim builds lineups, it is looking in the my projection column. Okay. The only thing you need to do different is you either need to come in here and upload your projections. You can upload a CSV, you can copy and paste it, or you can just manually make adjustments, right? Maybe you're, hand tweaking stuff, but effectively what's going to happen is all that's going to be different is that your, boxes here are either going to be different colors, or if you upload your adjustments and then you save them, right? You name it something, right? Maybe I name it source 1. The only thing that you have to do is come in here to this gear icon in the My Projection column, and then make sure you have changed your projection source to number 1. You can also do other things, right? You could average multiple sources if you want to take your projections and SaberSims and average the two. You could do a weighted average, right? So if I click weighted average, it's going to take my projections and SaberSims, and then I could say, hey, maybe I want to favor my projections 80% and I want to favor SaberSims 20%, right? Now you have like a 80-20 weighted, and then I just need to go and switch it, which I named it to weighted. I need to go and switch it to that source. So you can basically control everything from here. But outside of that, right, nothing else changes. All of the other SaberSim, steps of the process that we talk about are going to be exactly the same. So the big thing that you need to do is upload change projections of in some way, shape, form prior to starting your build. All right. Couple questions here from Snowman. Snowman said, how can I win more? I study more, play more. Is AI built into SaberSim? So a couple different questions. So first one, right? How can I win more? Right? DFS is honestly a really, really interesting game because it is not like other forms of gambling. It is not like sports betting. It is not like pick six. It is not like poker, right? It is not like, I don't know. I think I said sports betting. I was going to say like race horses or things like that, right? DFS, oftentimes your wins come in like one fell swoop, and you spend most of your time losing and you spend a very small amount of your time winning, right? So like this is, these are what bankroll graphs look like for DFS. And if you come from like other type of gambling, even like cash games, right? You're usually going to see like this slow and steady trek upward, right? With some swings down, but usually like kind of climbing a mountain, right? Is kind of how I think about it. But in DFS, you see big spikes and then down swings, right? And then you see a spike and then you see a spike, right? And they're not always as like huge spike, but you might see like some a little bit smaller spikes here and there, which they can come, right? But often you're only getting to a few of those in a season, right? This is a 150, 160 day season here. And I mean, if I follow this like one line, even when the person gets off to a great start, right? One, a couple small, I wouldn't even call those like good spikes. I see another one here too. And that kind of seems like the last one, right? And like there's like a positive season, right? Another one over here, like maybe a couple more, like 3 spikes, 4 like smaller ones, right? But like these huge spikes, right? They don't come often, and you could only expect a handful of them in a season. So, but what happens, right, is that one huge lineup makes up for all of the losing, right? So it's really important to exercise bankroll management. Like honestly, the best thing that you can do, which I recommend, and this is a little bit harder, right? But if it was easier, everybody would be doing it, right? So you go to your slates that are coming up, right? There are low stakes contests across all of these slates. And the best thing that you could do are play contests where the best players in the lobby don't have access to them, right? So you can go get, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 slates of low stakes action tonight on DraftKings. If you don't want to play showdowns, if you only want to stick with classics, you can still play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 classic slates. And, that's on DK alone, right? And then we switch over to FanDuel, and then they have, 1, 2, 3, 4 full roster slates on FanDuel. So if you're like, hey, classic DFS, is a little bit better for me. I'm not really into like the whole, showdown duplication game. I mean, there are so many ways to get low stakes action in where the best players in the lobby can't play those contests. That is, I would say, the number one thing you can do to win more is play more low stakes, right? And the only way you're going to play more low stakes is to play more alternate slates. say that again. I don't know how much artificial intelligence or we're using. I know we use a ton of machine learning. ML is like a I don't know. I don't want to say like counterpart, but is adjacent, to like AI. So we use a ton of machine learning. Our models are very advanced, and our team works super hard on them all the time. I don't have a ton of ins and outs because I'm not a data scientist, but I know that they're always doing cool stuff and doing a ton of back testing. All right. Snowman said, why is the money so low in NBA and NHL GPPs on DK? Well, it depends what you're comparing it to, right? If you're comparing it to NFL, NFL is always going to be the biggest. NFL is probably the most popular, sport. We see the numbers, right? I mean, you look at like they're making a big deal about viewership on Christmas, right? Like, 25 million people watch the NFL and, 5 million watch the NBA. That's it right there, right? Like how much attention are those sports getting? I think the daily sports are a little bit harder, right? Because like, okay, yeah, NFL gets, 25 million on a Sunday, right? But they only, all the teams play like once a week, right? That's why they're trying to add more showdowns, add more games throughout the week. They're doing Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, right? I think we saw every day this week, this season. I think we saw every day except Tuesday. I don't remember seeing a Tuesday game, but I remember seeing Wednesday, Thursday. Wednesday was Christmas. They do Thursdays regularly. Fridays, they did like a Black Friday game, and obviously Saturdays and Sundays. So just, attention, people care about it more, all those things. And that impacts the DFS lobbies, right? How many people want to wager on that sport, right? So all that comes into play. Next question. When running contest sims, should I be prioritizing max ROI, median ROI, or a different metric for these large GPPs? Good question. So just to kind of, go through like the differences there. Do I have a build with lineups? Okay, this one has lineups. I don't think we have a contest sim though. Let's go make one. Ooh, we got a milli tonight. Go back to build one. And we will hard refresh real quick. And then we're going to kick off this contest sim. And then we'll set up some of the default metrics that you see here. So typically what you're going to see, right, are max ROI, median ROI, and then min ROI. These are like the defaults. And they look like this because I don't have a contest file uploaded, so I can't use target. But anyways, what is this showing you, right? So like this question comes up a lot in like late swap where people have like a high, max ROI, but like maybe like a lot lower median and like a negative min, right? So what happens here is the max is telling you what the highest ROI is for any one lineup across all of your contests. Okay. So if you're playing 5 contests and in one contest, one lineup is doing really good, it's going to show you the ROI from that one really good lineup. So it's basically sifting through all of your contests, all of your lineups, and it's saying like, hey, the highest ROI we can find in all of your lineups is this, right? It's not really saying like, hey, this is the ROI against your entry fees or anything like that, right? Because what if it's in like a low stakes contest and you have a lot of entry fees, right? Maybe even if you win it, you still end up negative. It's not saying that. It's just saying like, this is the highest achievable ROI across your set. Median is doing, is kind of showing you like how your results are on average, right? So it's looking at all of your lineups and saying like, hey, the 50th percentile ROI is X, and then minimum is like your lowest lineup. I don't use these personally. I know they are the default. It's fine to use them if you like those, right? If you want to see like the high end, the low end, and in the middle, I just use average ROI. I just come in here and do like an average, and this works fine for me, right? If I want to see more detailed breakdown, I typically, once the slate starts, right, you can switch from the game panel to like a portfolio EV. That actually works after the last game of the night locks, so you won't see it until the last game starts. Or what you can also do right after the game start is go to the contest tab, and then when the slate is live, there is a new pop-up that appears in this blank section called Sim Results, and it'll tell you how you are doing on a contest by contest basis. So what we're doing is we're simulating the slate as the games continue to play, and we're saying, hey, we think you're going to end up with about this much money. We call it Sim EV. Like, hey, we think your Sim EV is X, right? If you have $50 in entry fees and we think you're going to double your money, we'll say, hey, your Sim EV is, $100, and it'll keep changing based on the new sims that are running for the new updates to how players are doing in the games, right? Because we're pulling in live data and using the live data to simulate out the rest of each game, which allows us to simulate out the rest of the slate. So those are good ways to like see how your lineups are doing, but hopefully that gives you some ideas about which options are better for you. Snowman said, what's the most you have won? Good question. The most I have won is I came in second place in actually this contest, this Millie Maker tonight, for 150K. So this 1 million to first, 2.25 mega milli. I have come in second place in that contest. If you want to see it, go over the winner circle, SaberSim, and I'd be in this. Wow, we had 15 millies. That's so cool. Push me back to the top. Okay, here we are. All right, where are we at? Crafty, Giant Squid, Dr. Toy, BB Mon, Shady, Mark, Elusive Smoke. Here we go. So this one, I came in second in this millie that they run tonight one time. And then I also came in first place in the NBA micro millie. It's like a $4 150 max, which was another pretty sweet hit as well. So I've had a couple 6-figure scores, had a number of 5 figures as well, which is always cool. All right. Next question. If on the standard plan without contest sims, do you recommend trimming the lineup pool by filtering out lineups over a certain SaberScore? Good question. I don't think there's a good, the SaberScore formulas change from sport to sport, right? So like it's hard to say, it's hard to give you a specific SaberScore number to shoot for, right? So if we go here, it's like large slate, say like 10 to 50K. The SaberScore here is like 104.78, right? I could go and do this for like another sport, and my high SaberScore could be a different number, right? So there isn't like a, hey, you want your SaberScore to be above 70, right? Because if it's above 70, then it's positive ROI. Like that doesn't exist. So what we do recommend, however, is trying to stay in the top 25 to 50% of your pool, right? So like in this pool, I have 500 lineups. I wouldn't want to go past 250. And it's not to say like you can't go past 250. You could, right? If like, you make some adjustments, maybe you have like one lineup at like 260 and then it kind of jumps higher. Like that's okay. But the idea of that, right? The logic comes from the fact that if you set a filter for ROI greater than 0, typically somewhere around, somewhere a little less than half of your lineups go in the trash, right? So like we had 500, 235 in the trash. So this is like where we came up with like the general recommendation of like, if you are going to go further than, halfway down your pool, well, then you're probably venturing into a little bit more negative ROI lineups. So if you try and stay higher in your pool, chances you run into those are less. So that's why I would say try and stay in the top 25 to 50% of the pool. Soman said, nice. You're the man. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Next question. How should I be weighting ROI versus something like SaberScore in Sims? So it's really important to understand that ROI is always going to be better than SaberScore. Okay. So the reason for that is because SaberScore casts a bigger umbrella. It casts a bigger net on what it includes, right? So we built SaberScore using contest sims. What we would do is we would backtest contests, and then we would use a number of different variables, and we would use a number of different weights, and we kind of figured out what variables are important, what weights matter based on how many entries are allowed in the contest, and then that's how we came up with our SaberScores. Now, what's important is that you see here that with SaberScore, we have wide ranges, right? Like, hey, this is all contests that are 1K to 10K entries, okay? It doesn't account for stakes and it doesn't account for payout structure, but it does account for games on the slate and the general size of your contest. What contest sims do better, as you can see it here with our ownership buckets, it accounts for the stakes you're playing, which is the strength of the field, the strength of your competition. It accounts for how many entries are allowed. And then it accounts for exact payout structure, right? Like when you go to the contest tab and you come in here to the sim settings, each contest, even if the contests have the same exact field lineups, the number of entrants are exact. It's not a range. It's not, 100 to 1K. It's no, this contest has 194. This contest has 334 exactly. And then not only that, right? But like, hey, this contest pays out 21.4% to first. This other contest pays out 16.6% to first, right? That's going to matter. So, because if you're playing, even this contest, 728 entries, 20% to first versus 1,000 entries, 44% to first. The builder is going to like different lineups for those contests because of the payout structure, right? So payout structure gets accounted for, exact entries, the stakes of the contest, the number of entries allowed, and that is why ROI is better than SaberScore. All right, next question. If using my own projections, how much do I need to adjust things like sim diversity, especially for NBA with lower correlation? I would leave the sliders where they are. The sliders are set based on our back testing, and, using your own projections isn't going to affect the sliders really. This is basically giving you an idea of like how important stacking is, how much upside you need to build into your lineups. You can come in here and just increase the sim diversity. If you want more stacking, you can increase correlation. If you want less stacking, you can lower it. The levels that they're at, are the best based on our back testing, and I don't think uploading custom projections impacts those at all. All right. Orangutan trade salesman said, thanks, dude. You are welcome. Jimmy said, I usually set a rule no more than 3 players on the same team, but for tonight's slate would be better. Would no more than 2 be better? The way I usually think about this is I will come into the builder and I will sort by value. And then I will just see what teams are coming up most frequently. And it's important to understand where the value on a slate might be coming from, right? What if, Golden State is like notorious, not really this season, but like in the past, for like sitting all of their starters on like a single day. And they're just like, hey, we're just going to like, take this game off. And then they play a bunch of bench guys and they get a bunch of minutes, right? So this kind of gives me a sense, right? So it seems like there's some value on Phoenix. We can just like go to Phoenix and look. And then it's like, okay, what's up? Like, oh, okay, Booker's out. Oh, Grayson Allen's out. Oh, Bradley Beal's out. Like, 3 guys who get a lot of playing time, right, on their team. And then it seems like it's Kevin Durant. And then like, look at the salaries, like 5,000, 4,300, 4,800, 5,100. It's like KD and then, a bunch of other guys behind him, right? So maybe like you're okay with 3 players from Phoenix, But aside from that, you don't really see any other teams kind of popping up here, and you just want 2, right? Like that's fine. If it's totally okay to say no more than 2, right? So then what I would come in here and do is set up a group automatic rule, say use no more than 2, and then I would group by team, right? This would be for every team on the slate. Now, if you wanted to basically change it for Phoenix only, what you could do is click this drop down, go to manual. It'll save the rule individually per team. Click this drop down, and then you go down to Phoenix. And then you adjust only this team. You say use no more than 3. And then typically what I'll do is I'll update the title of the rule because it won't change on its own. That way, when I come in here and I can see, hey, Phoenix has 3, right? So that's one way you can do it, or you can just do 2 for every team if you want. So I don't really use a rule like this. If you want to, that's fine. But this is how I would basically be thinking about determining what number I would want to use in the event I do want to do that. All right. Good stuff so far. And gonna go check out office hours. So I got a couple questions rolling in here. Get those in the queue. All right. Question from MacMan. And then one from Squanto. First question. How do I specify a multiple position player in a specific position instead of another? Okay, got it. So let's say somebody has multi-positional eligibility, right? Let's take, I don't know who this is. Let's see. We'll take Moses Moody, right? So Moses Moody here can play point guard or small forward, right? And then he falls into all these utility positions as well. If you only want to allow this player in one spot, maybe I only want him as a point guard, or you know what? It's the last game of the night. I mean, SaberSim will do this for you in case you guys didn't know. Like it'll use a player in a later game in a flex position. But let's say that, you only want him in the guard. You don't want him in point guard, small forward, forward, or utility. I would go to this player. So I'm just going to filter for Golden State. And then I would uncheck him in all of these slots. So I go to point guard, I uncheck him. I go to small forward, I uncheck him. Notice he's checked here, right? Because it's a different slot. So we unchecked him in point guard. We didn't uncheck him in small forward yet. So I go to small forward, I go to forward, and then I go to utility, right? So now if I go through these, the only one he's still checked in is the guard spot, right? So here he can now only be allowed to play in this position. All right, next question. Do you recommend rebuilding lineups after making exposure/projection adjustments, even if the builder doesn't complain? So exposure adjustments, no. Projection adjustments, yes. I would probably do all of my projection adjustments. That way they get accounted for in the lineup building process. And then if I was doing exposures, I would leave them as is, because exposures are just kind of like, hey, I want these players in my lineups, but projections like have a bigger impact into the lineups that you get, right? So projection adjustments before building, or you can rebuild, right? Make your projection adjustments and then rebuild. For exposures, you do not. I don't feel it's necessary to rebuild. If I think my own source projections are not creating enough differentiation from original SaberSim sims, what are some things I could do to create more leverage? This is hard, right? Because it's like, if you think your projections are good and they are coming up with similar decisions as SaberSim, well, one that speaks a little bit to say like our projections are good too, right? If you're saying your projections are better, right? If that's the angle you're coming from, the only way to do that would be like to make your projections worse, right? In order to deviate from what you're seeing, your projections would have to be altered. And if you're saying your projections are already as the best going in the first time, I probably wouldn't do so, right? I don't think you need to be like hyper focused on trying to make your projections different from SaberSims, thinking that like you're going to get the same lineups as other SaberSim users, because you're not, right? Like what Sim Diversity does is it randomly samples our sim database. And, let's say that, we have like 14 games on the slate, right? So then we're going to run these lineups and we might need 10 sims from every game here. And I think there are like 25,000 sims now. So we go take 10 random sims from game 1 out of 25,000, 10 random sims from game 2 out of 25,000, right? And then just like the pure combinations across 14 games, when you start, multiplying them, it gets like exponentially high, right? And then that's just for one lineup. And then for lineup 2, we go take 10 new sims, right? And, the amount of sims and the amount of combinations is just so drastically high. Like, I don't want to tell you like, oh, go and change your projections, because your projections are going to affect the values, which are going to, affect how the players perform. And then that leads to, different stands on the slate, right? If you're trying to do something to get different, I would say increasing sim diversity, probably the best thing you could do, because it's going to lower the number of sims we're taking each time. And then the lower the number of sims, the more random things that can happen, right? Like if we were to flip a coin 10 times, chances are 50-50, sure, but it could be 8-2, it could be 7-3, right? Doesn't have to be 50-50, but if we did that example 1,000 times, 10,000 times, we're going to move closer and closer to 50-50. So the same way, like when we take less sims, more random things can happen, which could lead to different exposures and leverages or stands on a slate. But then, the lower sim diversity, the more and more sims we're using. So the more and the closer we're getting to, relying on the projections, relying on the player values until we get to 0, which is where we're actually just using the values in the my projection column to build your lineups. So higher sim diversity typically would be a good way to do that. So that's what I would recommend. All right. Good stuff so far. Checking office hours again. And it looks like we're all caught up this time. So I think we're all caught up here in the YouTube chat and the Discord. Was a little worried coming into the show. We didn't have any questions, and we had a couple in the YouTube chat to start, and questions just continued to roll in. So that's super awesome. Wu said, thank you for the insight. I've just been trying to avoid as many dupes as possible in these large GPPs while maintaining optimal micro factors, such as player projections. Thanks for helping. Yeah, dupes, if you're playing like showdowns and stuff, totally understand. Dupes are just going to be a factor in general. They're just, not hundreds of thousands of possible good lineups, right? There's like tens of thousands, right? And it gets smaller as the player pool shrinks. So I would definitely be thinking about dupes. I don't think projections alone will, help you to avoid duplication. You're going to have to like start thinking about ownership and start thinking about geometric mean and salary and lineup combinations and things like that, right? So get into like a little bit more game theory stuff. So that's what I would be like thinking about for dupes. But I'm glad my answers helped with some of the projection questions. So appreciate everybody tuning in. I will be back tomorrow, Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern for our next show. So until then, everybody, take care. Good luck. Thanks. Bye.